Hey, everybody, welcome back to another soon to be exciting episode of the You Winning Life podcast. So it is now the beginning of February. Whenever this episode is going to come out, it's going to come out. But you may have already heard people talking about the Clubhouse app. You may have already heard me talking about it, whether in a previous episode or, just checking out with me on social media. And one of the most amazing things about that is the people that you connect to in the most simplest way by just saying, hey, I would like to connect with you. And one of those persons is sitting across from me on the screen and across from us on the audio. And his name is Frank Sell. He is a creator of an amazing, amazing coffee company called Make America Grind Again, with the brand of Make America Grind Again, called Get Shit Done Coffee. He is also the owner of the site Home of the Hustle. So Frank, thanks so much for hanging out, man.
And Jason, it's my honor to be here. Thank you.
Cool. So we were talking about previously before the interview about our little bit of our educational shared similarities, right? I was sharing that I had a 1.8 GPA when I graduated high school. And the reason why I actually graduated high school was the dean of the school was a family friend and kind of was like, we got to let you go, you know? I remember signing my name on my French final and walking out without doing anything. And I just did it. There was no chance, right? So the blessing of like having someone being like, listen, I'm gonna use this situation for good and like move you on was a really good thing for me, not knowing where I was gonna be, what I was gonna do, what I wanted to manifest and all that good stuff. So I wanted to put that onto your side of the coin and be like, okay, what was it that, from that side of like going through high school, going into like college, what was showing up for you? What was going on in your world and then we'll lead into where you're at now.
Yeah, so it was just really being present in life. I didn't understand that it was presence back then, but in high school, and I actually just updated the bio on our website at homeofthehustle.com to kind of explain the story that, like most of us, I was sold this idea, this dream of get an education or get a trade and then go get your job, put it out, do that, whatever it is for 30 or 40 years. So for me, I hated school. Like yourself, I almost felt like it was a mutual agreement. Like they were like, "Hey, I'm tired of you." And I'm like, "I'm tired of coming." So we'll just call it a deal. And I graduated, but I took advantage of a vocational program and I learned how to weld. And so because I knew that further education, college education was not a good investment for me. I wouldn't apply myself, and so I learned the trade, and that's what I did. And then it didn't take too long. It was probably about 5 years or so, and I realized that dream that I sold as well no longer existed in this world. And so we see that every day now. People putting in 30 or 40 years as one company just doesn't exist.
Yeah. So when you're going back to this idea of you choosing to go into a trade, which I'm a huge fan of, and the challenge is that a lot of those trades are no longer being supported by the economy. Right, especially right to 2020, 2021. So people need to like the new trades and the new new vocational skills is actually all tech, right? Is all the STEM stuff and graphic design and marketing and branding and website and all that stuff. At that time, what was it about welding that called you? What was like the dream that was sold to you? And what was it that actually called you to pick that over everything else?
I knew I could always be employed because that was my mindset back then, employee mindset, that I could always go out and make money somewhere. Because welders, and it's with the current administration stuff, we see how fragile that is. And that was one of the things that I noticed. The last job that I had was I started in Valentine's Day 1994 was when I started. I was 18 years old. They had a 30-year retirement program, everything I was told I was supposed to do. And then a few years later, they sold the company and it changed. When companies get sold, they need profit and they need to move the numbers around and make it look justifiable. So what they typically do is they adjust the benefits package. And so they changed the retirement age from 30 years of service to you have to work there till you're 55. And here I am, maybe 24, 25 years old. I've already spent 5 years with this company. And I'm like, man, I'm not going to work until I'm 53 and haven't changed a deal on me again. And so that's where I just kind of had that epiphany that I need to take control of my sovereignty, my future, and either quit complaining about it or do something.
Well, I love that term that you just used, the title sovereignty. So what does that mean specifically to you? Because it's such a salient title and word, because I know that like once we start dancing in the entrepreneur space, we start becoming responsible for our own outcomes. And my belief is that when we make decisions based on core values and then we hold ourselves accountable to those core values, that's when we truly
Uh-huh.
become sovereign, right? That's really becoming entrepreneurial. And it sounds to me like you
Right.
went through that journey yourself. Like, I don't want anybody else to determine what my outcome is going to be, what my fate's going to be, right? And I hear this a lot of times in, like, let's say the education world, right? That they're like, well, we want something better, but they keep changing our vacation and they keep making us have to do more paperwork and but our salaries aren't going up. And
Mhm.
there's this fear of like, well, what are you doing it for? Well, health insurance. Okay, well, how much does health insurance really cost you a year? And how can you hustle on the side or create something different that will negate the cost of being afraid of not being able to have health insurance? And that's why I love hearing from people like you who've created something to say, I'm going to get out of that fear factor and go to the other side of the mountain. So what was that mindset for you to say, like when you had that aha, like I know you said like, yeah, I know they're going to move they're going to move the yardstick a little bit more down the road. What was that actual moment where you're like, okay, I'm going all in on me?
I was standing underneath this parts rack at the job that I had when I had that epiphany that, you know what, I'm Frank Sell, and I'm just gonna, no matter what, I'm just gonna make this happen. And I didn't have the depth or the breadth of the spiritual understanding, like we were talking before the show. And it's a really deep rabbit hole. So I mean, we'll caution your listeners, man, grab a rope or make sure somebody knows where you're at, because this rabbit hole goes deep. You may get lost in it for a while. But at that time, like I said, the sovereignty, I knew that I was built for more than where I was at in life. The people that were doing what I was doing 20 years longer than me didn't have the results I wanted. And so, like for me, I saw what was around me. And, for me, I made kind of like the decision that, my hands are pretty smart. So I'll just teach my hands a new trade. And so that's what we, on like on the coffee you're talking about, on every product, it says beat the damn street so hard they send you a bill for the potholes. So I bought $100 VHS tape. It was that long ago. It was VHS tape on how to fix hail damage on cars. And so I watched this tape, and then I trained, I just taught myself how to do it. And eventually one day I volunteered for a layoff because I wanted to kind of take that path. And then, eventually it just finally, there's a lot more to the story, but eventually they called me back to say, hey, we want you to come back to work. And I just like, no, I don't think I will. I'm going for it. So that was March of 2003 when that happened. And so ever since then, we've been self-employed and in the entrepreneur spirit.
So was there like a dollar ratio of like, I know that if I do one job by
Yes.
myself, it'll equate. And I love this number that like when I really sit down with people to figure this out, like it just becomes so mind boggling to them. And I'm not a math guy. I still use my fingers to like count for a tip, and thank God for the tip applicator on the tip app. But like it's such simple math that when you realize that like you're getting X amount of dollars per hour at your job, if you can replace working X amount of hours somewhere else that's probably a third or a fourth less, or maybe even 3/4 less, what would that be that would give you that simplicity? So did you kind of go through this math of like, okay, like, so I know they're paying me this and this is what it breaks down to an hour. And here's if I do this, right, this thing that I learned on the VHS, I can make this, and I only need to work X amount of hours to make what I'm working full time.
Mm-hmm. No, that's not me. Details and stuff. Like, so what I did is I knew that the guys that were doing what I was wanting to go into, they made six figures a year. I knew they made $100,000 plus a year. And so that's literally all I did was I set the goals like, okay, I want to make $100,000 a year because I know somebody else is doing it. And I know my hands are way more talented than theirs. I know that, I will not give up, and I will work my face off to make this happen. So for the first 3 years or so, that was all I did. I cashed out my 401k, all my chips are in, and just really started hustling. I was very fortunate. As I cashed out my 401k at 27 years old. It was my age at the time. I had, $45,000 in my 401k. So I bet everything on me and said, there's $100,000 that's available if I, do these certain things in a certain way and provide enough value. Then eventually, I didn't understand like the depth of all this, but I just knew that if I go out, service enough people, beat the streets, that it's going to happen eventually.
So you took 45 and made it into 100, right? So that's a logical price point paradigm,
Uh-huh.
right? Which a lot of people are so. So what was some of the fear points for you? What was some of the self-doubt, the nagging behind that might have been there that, you had to overcome to go all in?
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Man, I've been asked that before and stuff. And I'm just blessed with the level of ignorance not known to the average person. I think that was one of the things too, is just that my belief in myself, it overshadowed all of that. because other people had enough fear for me. And that's one of the things I've learned, like, listening, reading the books, 7 Habits and different things, that they may love you, and their criticism and stuff may come from a place of love because they're afraid for you. And I had enough people telling me that, my dad's like, man, you're almost vested. We used to hear that back in the 1900s. You're almost vested in your job and you get retirement. And like you're talking about insurance, I haven't had insurance for, I don't know, probably 15 years. I haven't paid for health insurance. I have not been sick. I rely on assurance, making sure I eat good, making sure I take in good things to my mind and everything else. Same thing with my kids. And so, it was just realizing that, do you have the results that I want in the specific area that I want? I didn't know how to explain this back then or understand it, but I felt it, that you don't have the experience in the area that I'm going into. So I appreciate your input, but I'm doing this anyway.
Oh, I so get that. I remember a few months ago, I sent a clip to my father, and my family is a third generation furniture business. And it was started by my grandfather after he escaped Nazi Germany and came to Pennsylvania. And then we moved it down here. My dad took it over, and then my brother and sister took it over subsequently. And I sent him something from like the podcast. And like, it was like, the immediate thing wasn't like, oh, this is really cool. Who was that guest? I like what they said. It was like, you weren't looking directly at the camera. And I'm like, right. No, that's not what I was sending it to you for. Right. Like, and I know, like, it's just, there's like a mindset from previous generations or people who are like, I love hearing the thing of like, where people tell like that story of like, they're driving around with a family member or a child or a grandchild, like, see that property over there? In 1962, I could have bought that property for $10. Did you?
Right.
No. Right. And they're so stuck in this old story of what could have been. And it sounds to me like you moved from the it could have been to, like you said, I'm taking this stance, planting my flag in the ground and saying, no, this is on me.
Yeah, and what I found out through moving forward, it's a process that I call. I started getting understanding of who's thinking I'm thinking, because like what you're talking about, is we get our social and our emotional, all of our programming from 0 to 7 years old, and we just repeat that programming over and over, whether it's in our relationships, our children, our business, money, everything else. Because like you're saying, I just had this conversation with my girlfriend the other day. Is like, I have to watch myself because I see like my children. And it's so crazy how everybody and every person in this life they have an agreement to participate with us in a spiritual sense. And so I can see my children wanting to push away from me. And I realized, I was telling my girlfriends, like, I got to watch myself because I have this habit of being critical, kind of like you're talking about, with, your eyes not looking at the camera, and I see that from my father, and I see that passed down to me. And it's from a place of love, but it doesn't feel loving. Right. And so I have to watch that.
Right. It's the languaging and the scripting that we're passing on. I remember sitting in a therapy session with one of my clients, I don't know, had to be like 8 years ago. And I remember sitting back in my chair and scratching my elbow in a certain position. And I'm like, my elbow doesn't even itch. And oh my God, my dad was like, and I had a flash of a memory of my dad when I was a little kid, like sitting there in the chair and like scratching his elbow. I'm like, and it was like, what's going on that I'm being triggered to get there? Right. In that space.
Right.
And it really it wasn't his fault because there was no negative implication to it. It was just like how quickly we mirror and we resemble things that are our previous generation, our stories and our heritage and our culture that we have to unpackage to become much more living in our potential. Some of those things are great things that we want to amplify. Some of those things are neutral, like that body language type of thing. And some things are really not healthy that we have to continue. So like, what's like from those ahas that you had, what was the next step that took you to?
Well, I get to decide. And at that point, I get to choose because, as we're talking, I had a friend of mine, she explained to me, it's called the Jahari Window, but it's like the 4 levels of knowing stuff. 4 levels of consciousness, 4 levels of awareness, that you don't know what you don't know. And at that point, it's fine that you're an asshole or that you screw things up or you do different things because you didn't know. But once you go to the next step is you don't know what you don't know, then you know what you don't know. You become aware of these destructive behaviors or these behaviors that are not moving you forward or causing you to do more work. Well, then you have a responsibility to either do something with it or continue going around and doing these things, which is not really fair to you or other people around you, which is kind of like the epiphany I had at work. I realized I had this decision to make. I finally saw that what I was doing was not going to get me where I wanted to go. So I had to either just suck it up and just, go back and do this job for another 30 years and hope I could get retirement, or I could take action. And so that's, for me personally, spiritually, in business and life and everything. So you go to the next step of the window is that you know what you know, and you kind of think of like a toddler when they first start walking, they're all wobbly and they have to think about right foot, left foot, and their balance. And so that's where, for me, like I came to Christ like in March of 2013, and I started to go through and study and learn about the disc profiles and all these different things, and realize that I'm a high D person, personality, naturally, and I can get shit done, but I also leave like a trail of blood behind me. Right. Yeah, it's regardless of who's emotions got hurt.
Yeah, chaos mode.
Yeah, we're just gonna make it happen. There's a brick wall. Who's running through it with me? So then the next step is, as you refine it even further, that you don't know what you know because you know it so well. It's become a part of your genetics and part of your DNA, and it's just a natural aspect of it.
And I love seeing that, because I remember like as I was doing my therapy practice and realizing like I was on the pain point of it, where I was like, okay, but I'm also taking out my garbage and wiping down the doorknobs and, all of these things. And I'm like, this is not what I went back to graduate school to open up a business for, when even before that I was working at nonprofits and I was making less money, but I wasn't doing that stuff. That was someone else's job. And I had this idea of like, I'm avoiding going into the family business because of, whatever challenges. And therefore I never identified as an entrepreneur. I never identified as a business owner, right? And I think because of those beliefs that I had that were false, kept me away from really stepping into growing into my potential, not only as like from the financial side, but even becoming an even better therapist and entrepreneurial coach for people, was because I was avoiding an unclaimed part of myself that I needed to figure out. And I need to, right? And I had a friend of mine, Barack, who like for 2 years, like, you should go to this conference with me and it's really cool. And I'm like, entrepreneurs, like everybody in Miami is a douchebag. Like I don't need a Lambo. I don't want to show off my Lambo. I don't want to be like it was just so like, that was like, I grew up as a scholarship kid at a private school where, my parents were getting divorced during that time and I was on scholarship, and like, someone got a Range Rover for their first car. Like it just wasn't in my mentality. And I'm like, that's what money represented to me. And therefore like I had this unconscious block that money means be a douche, versus money means I could be the person who helps someone like me get a scholarship. And it was like, that's how loaded it was. It wasn't but you can help people get scholarships to school. It was, don't turn into an a-hole.
Yeah. And I have, kind of a similar story, maybe on the flip side of that is that, my dad, he grew up poor, at 14 years old, he left home and he's been on his own ever since. And so, to him, money meant security, money meant love, money meant everything, because that was the safety of being able to eat, be able to have a place to stay and live. And so growing up, to me, I didn't understand it, but there was more focus put on money than anything else. Turn the lights off. You're wasting energy. Don't waste the water. Well, you're not wasting water. It takes money to buy those things. And so all my life growing up, it was always like, how much can we save? How much, I can build this and take me 3 days to build it, but I saved $500, So that was implanted in me that money was more valuable than me or life or experience. And so for the longest time, I grew that original business, to where I could earn multiple six figures a year, using my hands, so we've literally, earned millions of dollars in revenue. It's a vanity number, but we've earned that. But I don't know if I had like a negative mindset towards it, but I never put that money back to work, for me, which is what, a true entrepreneur should do. So you can expand, because eventually you run out of your own energy. And so it's something that obviously I'm still processing and moving through, but starting to get a discernment between income and cash flow and revenues, because most of us are taught income, a dollar figure per year, per month, instead of thinking of ways that money comes in.
Right. And it's usually the way that we're trained is that you have to learn a specific trade field, whatever it is, and you put your output of time in exchange for that dollar amount coming in. And I love that whole E-Myth from Michael Gerber perspective. You have the entrepreneur, the manager, the technician, right? And the technician can be a surgeon making, for $1,000, $2,000 an hour, or it could be a $400 an hour attorney, or it could be a $11 an hour, right, worker, or a person making a barista at Starbucks. But those are all technicians, but they can only make to the cap amount of hours that they're able to work, and never more than that, right? And once I learned that mindset of like, oh my God, like, what your personality is suited for, because some people are really amazing technicians and they should be bonused and given the right amount of money for that. But if you're a manager and you're really good at organizing and like me, that's not my side. I'm either the entrepreneur, I have the great sides, or I have the great, hands-on. But once I started learning that and seeing like, I don't have to be everything. I don't have to be my marketing person and my management person and I have to start leveraging out in order for me to have free time. And it comes in stages, right? I feel like every year or two, there's another layer of the onion that I'm peeling away about that. So you're constantly recirculating that thing. It's like right now in the middle of the pandemic, I'm like, I have no more room for more clients. And I need to start figuring out a way to drop my least paying clients so I can make room for a higher paying client. Right.
Right.
But I don't want to do that because I'm like, well, I'm leaving money on the table. So now I'm in the process of bringing in 1 or 2 associates and everything is virtual now. So it's not like I have to pay for rent for an office, right? It's pure profit for both of us. So that like, it's changing that mindset that I have to be all me, that solopreneur versus being that entrepreneur. And I really do that. So so let's talk Java. Because this is like, this is the exciting. So when did that happen? When did this idea start formulating? Why coffee? And like talk about like where it is now from where it was just a brainchild.
Yeah, man, it's just the life of Frank Sell. So from being self-employed and working with my hands for so long, I began to realize how fragile that lifestyle was because it was all dependent on my ability to work personally. If my family eats, it's all dependent upon me. So I had started later than I wanted to. I should have had investments going that pay out dividends or rental property, something, but I didn't. And so the next best thing for me to do was leverage social media. So we started a Facebook page called Home of the Hustle because I didn't know how to market or how to brand or how to sell a physical product type thing. So we started this Facebook page, which is kind of like the podcast, kind of like what we're doing here. And we would just interview people live on Facebook and provide value. I had some buddies, we got together, so we'd have a different person every night or different personality. And also it would expand the network through all of our audiences. And so through that, I started a beard oil company. So when you grow a big beard, so if you're listening on this podcast, my beard is probably close to a foot long. It actually, and if you're a guy, you understand that when you start to grow a beard, it itches because it dries the skin out. The hair pulls pulls moisture from the skin. And so my partner at the time, I told her I was going to go buy something, to help grow my beard and stop the itch. And she was really into holistics and everything. So she said, no, I will make it for you. And so she did, and it was great. And the first night I used it, I slept really good. And I asked what happened. She said it was the essential oils. And I said, oh, okay, so it's like a facial diffuser. And she's like, yeah. And so the Baby Beard Club is a product line of beard oils that leverage essential oils, their therapeutic effects versus just the aroma, which most companies, they market to the machismo of a whiskey barrel this or tobacco that. And so through networking, I met some guys at a local networking event. They own a contract canning company, a coffee company. And so we just become friends, and they have, some beards, and they like my branding. So one of my beard oils was called Get Shit Done because the oils help you focus and concentrate. And so they like the product. They like what I stand for, Make America Grind Again and the hustle and all that. So they were buying products from me, and I like coffee. So I was buying their coffee beans from them, that's not their main product. And I'll explain that in a minute. So they're buying beard oil from me. I was buying coffee from them. And one day I ordered stickers to give away with our beard oil orders that just said Get Shit Done. They're like little 3-inch stickers. We've all got a product and we got stickers with it or something. And I also ordered coffee beans for my personal use from my buddies. And so this box of coffee comes in, and my stickers come in the same day, and it's sitting on my desk. And I thought this would be kind of funny to put a Get Shit Done sticker on the back of the bag of coffee. And I put that on Facebook, that picture, and people were like, is that seriously Get Shit Done coffee? How do I buy that? I'm like, hold on a minute. I took that picture and I put it on the website for Baby Beard Club. And so that is how we got into the coffee business. I called my buddies up, like, hey man, I'm selling your coffee. And they're like, awesome, bro. How much do you want?
I love it. We were going back to like beard oils. I have a buddy of mine who's in Houston. He's a musician, Joe Buchanan. He was on an earlier episode, and he is known for his cookie smelling beard oil. Like that's just like, wow. Joe's in the room when you smell like who's baking cookies. And it's like, that's his like signature smell. Right. And, he's an Americana musician down in Houston. And, it's so funny. Like, 'cause this beard, like we were joking, like I can't grow beard for the life of me. And so I'm missing out on that whole industry, but I know it's such a thing. It's such a, like, people are all in, and like, I've seen like, they're like, wait, is it this one? Do I use that one? Like it becomes like a little bit nerdy in a great way about
man, tell me about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, and I was really passionate, and I still am passionate about the beard oil because it aligned with my purpose at the time, was what I call armored up man. And goes back to that wisdom and discernment of whose thinking are you thinking? Because, as a society, we just take it for granted, or we're just unconscious about this programming from 0 to 7 years old that we get, and we never take it upon ourselves to get our own understanding of life.
For sure. So leveraging the coffee now, like, so what's going on actually with the coffee business present? Like, where's that at?
Yeah.
What's the next steps?
Yeah. So when I started selling their Get Shit Done coffee beans, just in conversation, joking around, their main business is contract canning cold brew coffee. So on the video you can see behind me, I have a rack full of cold brew coffee cans. And just a conversation one day, I said, a Get Shit Done cold brew coffee would be awesome. And they're like, yeah, we agree. So here's the options. It's either going to take, $20,000 to develop a proprietary formula, or if you want to wait a few months, we're developing a couple formulas that I can just private label, meaning it's their formula. I just use their formula and put my label on it. So initially, like cold brew coffee, the first, few flavors that I tried, I'm like, man, I can't believe people buy this and pay for it. It just is bitter. I didn't appreciate it. It's not for me. But when they come out with these new flavors, which is more kind of like a sweet cream, what they call a latte, I'm like, holy crap, this is good. I will drink the heck out of this so I can sell it. And so that's where September of last year, we were able to get everything together. The process, man, it's way more to it than what I thought. But in September, I bought my first pallet Get Shit Done cold brew. So if you have this on a video, you can see there's a can of coffee. And so I bought that in September. There's 2,304 cans on that pallet. And I started selling it really quick. I had no advertisements. I was just building up hype through social media, Facebook, about really just not even hype, just telling the story like, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is what I believe in. This is what I want to do. This is where I'm going. And there's enough people that felt the same way that I did, that they want to go do something. And they really, bought into our story and what's happening, that I bought that first pallet. And then quickly I realized, man, I'm going to sell out. And so I bought another 600 cans. So in 5 weeks, I sold 3,000 cans of coffee with no experience in the business, no nothing other than just beating the damn streets so hard. I swear I get a bill for the potholes. And we sold it online through homeofthehustle.com. Everywhere I'd go, my kids and I race motocross. So I bought branded banners and canopies, and I would sell it at the races. And so what my initial mindset intention was not necessarily to make money with that first pallet, but to get attention, which that's what it did. So we're into some retail stores locally. We still sell online until right now. I'm in negotiations working with a distributor to sell the product at a pallet at a time. So from September of 2020, I went from selling cans and cases to now in February, we're working on selling pallets of product.
That's insane. Talk to me about the marketing side of this, right? Because you say, like, the motocross and there, the sign behind you, "Make America Grind Again," does speak to right? It speaks to a particular population of society. Right. Where are you finding that? Because I can't, like, in the generic thing of even someone who's like not in alignment with the original statement of that. Yeah. So like, oh, that's really cute. That's really like, that's a kind of that's a good play on that, right? Are you finding that there's polarizing people, like it's polarizing people in any way from that type of stance? Or are you finding like you're like, I just don't really care if they don't want to buy it, if they don't like that phrasing? Or it's like, or is it finding a way that you're getting beyond that and it's kind of like, no, it's like, we're going to grind and we're going to do it like the way we used to do it and we're going to do it better? Like, walk me through like that mindset of the marketing and the slogans.
Yeah. So like the Make America Grind Again, obviously it's a play on the MAGA, Make America Great Again. So I have people directly ask me, it's like, oh, you're a Trump supporter? I'm like, no, bro, I'm what's best for America. If it's Trump, it's Trump. If it's Biden, it's Biden. But we're seeing, nowadays in the marketplace that, and this is my sentiment, that 100 years ago we didn't have time to bitch and moan about this stuff because we're busy working. We're either plowing the fields or in the factory. We were doing stuff. And so that's what it's about. Is what, this is how we make America great again, is we get out and we grind again. We do what we're here for. We do what we're specialized in, and we go out and we fix this thing from the bottom up. And so for me, that's going out and selling a hell of a lot of coffee, because on every can It has the messaging, get shit done. It has the messaging, beat the streets so hard to send a bill for the potholes. On the side of the can, it has one of the things that I've learned about life is that do it scared until you can do it skilled. And it's got a little piece of scripture from the New Testament, that Galatians 5:1, which is, for freedom's sake, Christ set you free. Therefore, do not let yourself be burdened again by a yoke of slavery, meaning whatever it is, whether it's laziness, whether it's addictions, break that damn bond and get out there and get shit done.
I love it. It's so like the mindset component, and we were talking about this pre-show, like the mindset of entrepreneurship is like mind boggling to me when done right. And I don't think I've shared this in a long time on the show, is that like why the podcast is really on four main things, right? It's psychology, spirituality as it means to the person, entrepreneurship, and integrative and alternative medicine, is that those are the four pillars I strongly do believe that people need to master in order to live a successful, healthy, potential filled life. And the key component behind all those things is the commitment to doing any of those things. Is just not come up with an excuse to like let go of that old story that they're carrying in any one of those verticals, right? It's a spiritual story, or it could be a psychology story of family trauma, or right. I've had just the amount of like the interesting people I've had on this show that have like trauma, or I have someone who's a paraplegic who was shot at a party when he was a kid, and he's now like a marketing person and a rapper, and he's still doing all these things and an advocate, and he's like literally killing it when he was like, been made paraplegic at a party that someone brought out a gun and shot, right? And it's like it's all starts up here, mindset wise. And yes, we need these mantras, and it's playful, and it's like the get shit done and let's grind again and home of the hustle. Like those are brilliant, tactical, action oriented statements. And my belief is the more time we spend contemplating is the more time we spend away from our purpose. In other words, you eventually have to move into action step. And one of my mentors, Dr. Scott Walker, who's the founder of this integrative medicine modality called neuro-emotional technique that I do, says the universe always rewards the action step.
Yeah, I totally believe that. And it's something that, like, if you go back to my social media profiles and stuff, I talk a lot of times about opportunities, not the opportunity, because opportunities are everywhere, but nobody takes action on the idea. It's just taking action. I was on a Clubhouse. Like we were talking about Clubhouse earlier, it's an app where you can get on there with mostly entrepreneurs and stuff. But this lady was going through like beginning in the entrepreneur process, and you can kind of hear some self-doubt. And I'm like, look, man, the number one validator of your business is get somebody to hand you money for your idea or your product or service. You quit going around asking people that haven't done what you're going to do. So it goes back to our earlier conversation. They may love you and they're afraid for you, but number one, if you're gonna get shit done, go out there and just find somebody willing to give you money for whatever it is, your product or service.
It's over. I'm having a flashback to literally my first cash paying client. I was probably, I don't know, number of months out of graduate school, and I did like, I don't know, it's an extended session. It was longer than an hour, and the person at the end of the session handed me a wad of cash, and I get back in my car, and I'm like freaked out. I'm like, what the hell? Like, why do I have all of this amount of money to just sit there and talk to them? Right. And I was like a noob, like a really, really straight up noob therapist. Right. And like it just was the most uncomfortable feeling that I went right over to Best Buy and I bought the older version of an iPod when it was still the scroll wheel. Right. I'm like, I felt like it was like contraband, like I was doing something sinful and I didn't want to have that money because that money rep like, what am I? Right. And I'm like, okay, well, at least it's not like, I felt like I was laundering it, And I realized like, thank God, I love like that story is you're refreshing that in my mind by what you just said to be like where I'm at now, where I have on my website a line in the sand that says, if you're shopping around looking for the most affordable therapist and coach, I'm not it.
Right.
That juxtaposition from 2005, 2006 to 2020, 2021.
Right.
It took me 15 years, but it took me 15 years. It didn't take me 17 and it didn't take me 20. It didn't take me 30.
Right. No, I love that. And that's something that I think is ingrained in us also is that, people tell us to be humble. And to me, at this point now, because I went through that, that process, me coming to faith. And then to me, I felt like a castrated bull. Like I didn't know what to do, how to be in the world. And so like, for me at this point, I don't worry about being humble. If I get out of line, if I get too big of an ego, too big of a head, God's going to strike me down some way or another. I just go out and show up like you're talking about and, kind of and learn my value in the marketplace. And so that's that's something I see a lot of people kind of stuck on and hung up on is that, we're trained to be humble. And you don't really, if you start digging in, I don't think if you're in process, that shouldn't be something that you really have to think about. You just show up as your true, authentic self, and you'll be just fine.
Well, that takes a ton of work, and there is like that humble brag or that the false humility that we're seeing a lot in the entrepreneur world. And I don't know if you connected with Zach Babcock on any of the rooms, and
Yeah.
right. So he's a buddy of mine, and he's like, he and I were joking. He's like, you can't fake a Lambo on Clubhouse, and like you're gonna see who's the real deal and who's not the real deal, right? And I think it's learning and growing of like getting over your insecurities and realizing what the value that you bring to the table and what makes you uniquely positioned to bring that to help someone else. And obviously, right, you're leveraging your expertise in exchange for some type of transactional, right, whether it's money or product exchange or whatever it may be. But I think like everything that me and you are doing is trying to bring that out of people in the best way possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll share a story real quick.
Please.
So I was on a podcast. It was March of last year, March of 2020. And I had met this guy just through networking and all these different things. But I got invited out to an event in San Diego as e-commerce, selling stuff online as marketers and so on. And here's this guy. He sells, $10 million plus worth of products on Amazon a year. Gets paid to coach, has all these masterminds and stuff. So, I say that to kind of paint the picture that the guy is doing financially pretty well. But he invited me to come onto his podcast because of my $100 videotape story. And so, the false humility, like you're talking about, it had me weighed down because I was stopping the flow. So I was on his podcast, and it was a video kind of like we're doing now, that I could see his face. Here's this guy that more likely he makes, $1 million a year or close to it, selling products on Amazon. And his face lights up when I tell him how I had this idea that I made the decision. I bought a $100 videotape and I just started hustling, and I could see him light up. And it's like, wow, man, the world needs this story. And that's like our coffee product. What I noticed with the coffee product in our story is I'm really selling permission. I'm selling permission to go out and pursue your idea, your potential, your relationship, whatever it is, just do it scared until you do it skilled. Selling permission. And if you want to buy my coffee, that's great too.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. That was just so embodied of everything that I'm hoping for as a therapist and as a coach, and helping people get from point A to point B with simplicity and realizing that how awesome they already are. And if they only stop telling the story that they've been telling, all the stuff is already there waiting for them in escrow. So yeah, let's drop some links. So you have the podcast, we got the website, we got the coffee. So where can people track you down? Where can they buy the coffee? Where can they get the beard oil? Let's drop all those for people.
Yeah. So anywhere social media, Frank Sell, SELL. It's all mixed up. Junior in one, the Frank Sell and another one. Just Frank Sell, you'll find it. Or Home of the Hustle on Facebook and Instagram. And so I have a couple of different websites set up. Just homeofthehustle.com. They'll take you to our coffee page, and we have some apparel. You can buy a shirt with my face on it. It says Notorious GSD. And then babybeardclub.com if you want to go purchase some beard oil.
Awesome. Frank, thank you so much. So for anybody who's gotten any value, first of all, I don't know how you didn't get anybody who listened to this episode and didn't get anything out of this episode. Frank and I need to sit you down and have a good conversation, but there's so much really this mindset of getting past the walls and the insecurities and going all in on yourself is really what we're all about. And if there was any value for this, or if you know someone who would benefit from this episode or any other episodes, please drop it to them, send them a message, send them the link to it. And if you really loved it, take 3 minutes, go on iTunes, leave us a starred and written review. That's going to help this get in front of other people who can benefit from this as well. And Frank, so glad we connected online, and now we get to talk in person, and can't wait to see more happening on your end.
It's totally my honor. Thank you.